Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast, it's the football podcast. Just the three of us this week, but we're still bringing you all the juicy football news, previews, reviews, everything you could possibly want, all wrapped up in a nice football-shaped bow. That doesn't make any sense, but you know what I mean. Before we get started, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave a review where you can leave a review. Obviously the big one, share that podcast around. It helps the podcast out massively. And consider it your good deed for the day. How about that? Right, let's get started. Here we go. This is CookieCast, the football podcast.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the weekly CookieCast football podcast update. I'm joined, as per usual, by Messrs. Cook and Woodmansey. As of yet, sadly, still no Mr. Moore to make us the holy quartet that we so regularly are. But how are you both this week, gentlemen?
Yeah, good. You?
All good and
Yeah,
groovy.
not so bad. Football has managed to get itself out of the bin recently, which we'll obviously come to discuss briefly. However, for slightly different reasons, it did have to take a space back in the bin on Saturday afternoon. That will all become clear a little bit later in the podcast. So, the weekend brought with it only one fixture for our teams, and the rest of the fixtures were then covered with the midweek games. FA Cup weekend, or fortnight as it now seems to be, it tends to take place over the course of
I don't know what you're talking about, Paul. I don't know that there's been any FA Cup games on since January.
Yeah, the FA Cup died that first week in January for a lot of us. So, first of our games the weekend saw Middlesbrough take on Derby County. Get in the bin. From what I saw of the highlights of this game, it was actually Derby who started as the brighter of the two sides. They had a shot from the edge of the box, which brought a good save from Mark Travers in the Borough goal. And then, according to the highlights, it must have woken the Borough up, as it was all Borough from that perspective. Marcus Fors had an effort that was close, and Finazars actually managed to hit the post in the first half. But it did stay 0-0 at the half-time break. More of the same into the second half, Borough going closer with a couple of chances. Derby had a couple where they were close to the goal, but nothing much, didn't really work the goalkeeper or anything like that. It looked at one point as if the game was going to peter out to a 0-0 disappointing draw until the 80th minute, when an attempted clearance by the Derby right back found its way into the path of Aidan Morris on the edge of the box. He cut the ball back. It took a little flick off Tommy Conway and made its way to Iheanacho, who his effort was blocked, and the rebound kind of fell kindly for Finazars, who took a touch to set himself, and then absolutely rifled one at the top of the net from just inside the 18-yard box. Good finish, great celebration. I think it was one of those ones where the crowd had been sort of baying for not blood as such, but there's not an awful lot of good feeling between the fans of Middlesbrough and Derby. Obviously stemming from the financial, not irregularities, but questionable bookkeeping, shall we say, that Derby have been doing for some seasons prior that cost Borough playoffs. So 1-0, 80th minute, Finazars. Borough could have actually wrapped it up and made it 2 a little bit later on, Delano Bergsog found himself not clean through, but in behind, with a chance to just stick one in the far post. But his effort actually came up the side of the post and came back out. So the game finished 1-0 to the Borough. 2 wins on the spin. Very much back in the playoff hunt. It's points for everybody, apart from Mr. Moore, as obviously he didn't get any predictions in. But everyone had a Borough win. Stu had gone 2-0. Whitaker and Conway, so gets the point for the result. No bonus points for his goal scorers. Myself and Andy. Well, Andy had a 3-0 with Azaz, Iheanacho and Bergzorg, so was very close to getting another point on top of his right at the end. And I had 4-1 with Whitaker, Azaz 2 and Conway. And I had, of course, tipped up Ryan Nyambe to score for Derby, mainly because he's played something ridiculous like 8,000 games without ever scoring and stuff like that. So I was like, well, that's the most typical Borough stat you'll ever hear. So it was like, I'm gonna have to predict him to score. So yes, 1 point for Stu, 2 points apiece for myself and Mr. Cook. Our second game of the week saw Nottingham Forest taking on Ipswich Town in the 5th round of the FA Cup. Now, unfortunately, due to prior engagements, one being football and one being another podcast that will be available on this particular podcast network very, very shortly. In fact, it may even be out by the time this hits the market. Get yourself over there to see what we're saying. Yes, I was unable to watch this particular fixture. I believe also that Mr. Woodmansey was also unable to watch said fixture. And I know for a fact that Mr. Cook was unable to watch it because he was also involved in said podcast that may become available very shortly. So sadly, no one can really give us the breakdown of what happened in this game. Ipswich took the lead on the 53rd minute. Hurst. I've got it written down here that Yates scored on the 68th minute, but I think everyone that's fans of the podcast know that's not his name. His name is Shithouse. So Shithouse scored on the 68th minute to equalise. I did sort of have it on in the background to sort of keep abreast of the situation. I can't really remember there being any clear-cut chances. Forest might have hit the post, from what I can remember, towards the end of the 90 minutes and into extra time. But I can't, off the top of my head, remember any massively clear-cut chances to win the game for either side. So it did go to penalties. The first 9 of which were scored across the contest. It came down to what's his name? Taylor stepped up for Ipswich Town, and Sells was able to save his effort to make it 5-4 to Nottingham Forest and put them into the quarterfinals, where I believe they will face Bournemouth. A lovely little trip to Bournemouth. Who doesn't want to spend some time down on the Dorset coast with their tin pot little stadium that only holds about 11,000 people? Oh God, I hate that club. Everything they stand for.
Matt will be delighted with an extra fixture against Bournemouth at Bournemouth, won't he?
Yeah, he loves it. He's always spending time in Bournemouth. Loves the place. No one got points on this one because no one had predicted a draw. Everyone had predicted Forest to win, and obviously they didn't get that done in 90 minutes, so I can't give out points. No one had Yates or Hurst scoring their goal scorers, so it's 0-0 across the board. Our third and final game of the week. Oh, by the way, that Nottingham Forest Ipswich game was played on a Monday night. You know, lovely. FA Cup weekend, my arse. The final game of the week saw Hull City take on Plymouth Argyle. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Stuart, was this a rearranged fixture from one of the previous FA Cup rounds, or was it just scheduled in for now?
No, it was. We would have played on the Saturday had Plymouth not beaten Liverpool, and then they had a game at Manchester City at the weekend to which they got beaten. Although they did take the lead in that game,
They did indeed.
And then statistically the worst travelling club in the Championship made their way to Hull.
And how did they get on?
Well, we know what happens. If you're not playing well, you've not scored a load of goals, come and see one of our teams. Except for that didn't really work out this time, and the curse was kind of broken. It was a bit of a 6-pointer really at the MKM as Plymouth made a long Tuesday night trip to Hull. 21st playing 23rd. Hull absolutely dominated possession in the first half, but just could not find a finish. It seemed to me that the game plan that they'd been given was to basically just get crosses into the box. With only João Pedro being the lone designated striker, though, in the home lineup, it didn't really work to any great effect. I assume they were probably going for a bit of a knockdown layoff, someone try and bosh it in kind of a job. But it was a lot of crosses and not very many chances. And ironically, the only real chance was a direct header from a cross from Gustavo Puerta, who was possibly the shortest man on the pitch. Unfortunately for Hull, that was directed straight at Hazard, the goalkeeper for Plymouth. So pretty uneventful first half. Sat in the stands having a little chat with all the people around us, saying, "Oh, why do we bother coming out on a Tuesday night? Or could have had a sleep for 45 minutes, all the usual." But it didn't actually take long into the second half for us to get a goal, and even better for me was they were shooting towards my end at this point, so we got to see a little bit more detail. So good work down the right hand side. Cross came in, got deflected out, sort of cleared out to the edge of the area where prolific centre half turn left back, Sean McLaughlin was taking up residency. Decides he's going to take a bit of a low shot, and the centre half for Plymouth went to try and block it, and it sort of Hull got a little bit of good fortune for a change because the ball kind of like ricocheted between his legs and it just stopped it dead. On comes Joe Geldhart from first to react to it, and he pretty much had a penalty as it was from less than 8 yards out. It was just him versus the goalkeeper at this point, and he tucked it into the bottom right hand corner on 48 minutes to put Hull into the lead. Good fortune for the goal, yes. For all the possession and all the crossing and stuff, they were good value for it. But if you remember what I said the other week about when we played Norwich, when we went 1-0 up, they just then thought, that's it now, we'll just sit back. So, to the surprise of everybody in the stadium, they've seemingly learnt a lesson because they didn't sit back. They kept pushing.
Did they check to make sure all squirrels had been removed from the vicinity?
I cannot confirm nor deny that the entire squad between the Norwich game and this have just been in West Park with shotguns. Anyway, no, there were no squirrels were harmed in the making of that football game or this podcast. But yeah, like I said, they did keep up the pressure, which was nice following the goal. Geldhart went close again from a Kyle Joseph cross. Kamara played in Pedro, who was just foiled by the keeper. But then on 61 minutes, Pedro actually turned provider for Kamara. So Gus Puerta picked up the ball on halfway, checked back inside. Usual thing at this point is to play backwards. And for once, he actually stepped over it and went the other way and took somebody on, got past his man, and played the ball in like a through ball to Pedro, who then very unselfishly squared it for Kamara to score into an empty net. Now, you might have seen it, you might not have seen it. I was sat facing it, so I couldn't see the line at this point in time. I have seen the goal back since the game was played. Obviously, I'm very happy because we scored. that linesman has had an absolute shocker because Pedro was not onside. I'd like to say it was maybe, the linesman was slow off the mark, maybe he was behind play. No, the linesman was definitely level with the last defender. So God knows what's happened there. But a little bit of good fortune with a ricochet in the first goal. A lot of good fortune with the decision in the second goal. But it's about goddamn time we got a decision. The referee again, you all know that I've had my gripes with the referees this season. Very inconsistent, despite the fact that we came off the better of that. Still have to mention it because it's only fair. A lot of tackles flying both ways. A few yellow cards here and there actually as well, but no real consistency. What once was a crunching tackle on the edge of the penalty area and was definitely no foul. As soon as it got near the halfway line, though, a similar level of tackle, definitely a foul there. Bit of a strange one. But yeah, going back to just to finish the game off, McLaughlin had another chance. He fired marginally over from the edge of the box as the game kind of neared its end. But it took Plymouth until injury time to have what was only their third shot. But it actually totaled 0 on target in the entire 90 minutes. What's the drive to Plymouth? About 6.5, 7 hours? To see your team not have one shot on target in the entire game, that is a long trip for their fans. But yeah, after the result, Hull are now up to 19th, the dizzy heights of 19th, but more importantly, 5 points clear of the drop. Luton currently occupying that last relegation spot. So yeah, 2-0 win for Hull.
Lovely stuff. He was at the game, but he wasn't optimistic in his predictions. He went for a 1-0 Plymouth Argyle win. So no points for Mr. Woodmansey there. Andy had gone for a 1-0 Hull win with Crooks to score. That was never going to be the case. Mr. Crooks missed the game. A facial injury in training, I understand.
Yeah, that's what we've heard. It was a bit of a strange one when it was announced that he wasn't even in the side, but I don't know how serious it is, the details of it. But yeah, he was deemed to be injured, so not even in the squad.
And I had gone for a 2-0 Hull City, so 2 points for me. Sadly, I also had Crooks and João Pedro as my goal scorers, so just the 2 points for the correct scoreline for me. Which means that after the 3 games for this week, Stu finishes on 1 point from those 3 games. Mr. Cook, 3 points. I managed to bag myself 4 points for the week. So that's all of our games done. However, I myself also found myself live in attendance for a football game this weekend, as it was the annual Hartlepool United versus York City fixture. This was one that Cleveland police obviously shat themselves in anticipation of the game, as they made sure that any York fans travelling on the train were corralled straight into one of the designated 2 away supporters pubs straight from the station, and they arranged for a convoy sort of delivery, as it were, where the fans would be escorted to the ground at around 2 p.m. because football fans can't be trusted these days, and whatnot. Sadly for me, a very poor game settled by one bit of, I'd say brilliance, but it was more just clever sort of play, really. York were on the attack. Ex-Hull boy Nicky Featherstone actually was back on the cover for Pulls and tried to nick the ball away from the attacker. Did so, but completely took his eye off the ball in the fact that there was another York City attacker in the space, and his quick thinking just fired the ball straight into the roof of the net from about 6 yards out. Really poor game though, to be honest with you. No real clear-cut chances for either side after that. All they're saying that York did have a chance where that guy was clean through, and when he went to make the shot, he just lost his footing, which was funny. Shandon another one wide from about 8 yards out. Pools had chances to equalise, but again couldn't take them because they're wank. Ended up with a 1-0 York win. Disappointing. That means that York have won both games this season. Boo. Not happy. So I had to console myself with a Borough win whilst I was trudging away from the Victoria Park with nothing to show for our afternoon. So, week 27, done, dusted, in the books. Week 28 brings with it 5 fixtures. Oh, yes, Mr. Wood.
Just before we continue, I feel the need, before we get into the prediction stage, just to drop in the fact that we've had two two confirmed injuries. I think we might have spoke last week about Louis Barry. Still no timescale on that one. Apparently has gone back to Villa for treatment, which is never a good sign. But also I mentioned the tackle on Elliot Matazo, who went out injured. Just for those of you keeping score, that's now the 641st ACL that's gone pop in the Hull City squad this season. So star signing, been playing really well from January. Now out for the season, so don't be picking Matazo in any of your goal scoring activities.
By God's sake. Absolutely not. Oh, disappointing. Have to reinforce those knees for next season in the Hull pre-season stuff.
Apparently, though, just across the leagues in general, apparently ACL injuries are at an all-time high this year. So
it's not a surprise. It's like famously a very weak part of the body. So any sort of undue pressure, or like even like you'd be amazed how many times it's like your boot gets caught in the turf and you turn and your knee stays, and that's what.
Undue pressure? You mean a Sunderland midfielder riding the back of your leg until you ground to a halt? That'll kind of do it.
Listen, if anyone knows anything about the Northeast, it's that people are nothing but friendly. And
It's all right because they did that in Sunderland to Louis Barry, and then the Welsh took it upon themselves to absolutely smash Matazos. So there's no north-south division in the ACL ripping.
It's disappointing, to say the least, when players are put out for the season with injuries, sadly. So, week 28, 5 games. The first of which sees Nottingham Forest taking on Manchester City. Now, this is the live game on TNT Sports Saturday, 12:30 kickoff. Obviously, Mr. Moore is not here and has been unable to provide me with predictions. So, I believe in the last couple of weeks we've had we've had both Andy and Stu going last in the sort of the guest homer spot. So I'll do that this week. So let's go to Andy for his prediction for Nottingham Forest versus Manchester City.
I have a 1-1 draw.
Very nice. Goal scorers?
Not going to pass up an opportunity to get my wood out. And it's now that I realise the error of my ways when I decided to write down a name that I am not going to be able to pronounce. De B-E...
Bruyne?
Go.
I think it's technically pronounced De Bruyne.
Now then, right.
So that's what
has Andy actually picked a goal scorer, or has he just made a sound and let Paul pick one for him?
Well, when he said it,
fair enough. Yeah, it's there.
When he said it at first, I was like, "Oh Christ!" They signed that centre half in January and that forward in January. So one of them's called Kushanov or something like that, and one of them's Mamouche. I was like, "Oh no!"
I nearly picked Mamouche because I was like, "Ooh, there's a funky name." But no, apparently I decided to make it even harder for myself.
Well, touche. Right.
Well, you did pick Wood first, and then make it hard for yourself second. So
It's the kind of material you're doing with the ladies and gentlemen. Let's go to Mr. Woodmansey for his prediction next.
Sorry, Matt, if you're listening. I've gone for Forest 0, Manchester City 1, with currently lesser spotted Jeremy Doku goal. Unfortunately, Forest seem to have hit a bit of a rough patch form-wise, and we're just at that point in the season where if Manchester City are going to get serious about anything, they really need to get their shit together, which they seemingly did do by getting the Spurs away monkey off their back recently. So I feel bad that the fixture has come at the time it has, but I just think Man City will win.
Yeah, I'm in agreement, to be honest with you. I've even gone even worse. I've gone for 1-3. I think the Forest might get a goal, but they don't really have the best record against Man City either. They seem like, I mean, it does this season quite a lot. But historically, I don't think they've done that well against City since they've been promoted back to the Premier League. So I've gone for Wood because why not? I've then gone for Haaland to score twice, and there must be something there because I also have Doku as a goal scorer. So. Lesser spotted, but hopefully not this weekend if Man City have to score any goal. The second game sees Bristol City, technically one of the podcast's favourite teams, don't ask why, taking on Hull City. This one's at 3 o'clock and is very much not live on the Sky Telebox. It's Mr. Woodmansey's team. He will give his prediction last. I've gone for a 2-2 draw here. I think both teams are in a little bit of form. Could cancel each other out. I've gone for the boy who put the Borough to the sword, Earthy, and then I've gone for the old boy rule, Scott Twine to score. I had a little loan spell at Hull. I think he'll probably pop up with a goal at some point. And then I've got Gelhardt and Joseph to score for Hull. Andy, what have we got down for Bristol City versus Hull? I know this one must have been difficult for you, since it's technically boys.
Yeah, I was unable to give my boys a goal. I did give Hull a goal. However, I also completely forgot that Crooks had been listed as injured and had predicted Crooks to score that goal. So that could be embarrassing for somebody.
Do you want to stick with it?
He might be back for the weekend. I'm not sure how serious it is.
Facial injury suggests
black eye to me.
So, what I was going to say was, facial injury probably means could have suffered a cut that was potentially too bad for him to get like something sorted in time. But if they've had like over a week potentially to get something sorted, like a mask, he'll probably play the game, I would say. So you're probably okay with that. So 0-1. And
that's good. That is not foreshadowing in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, but you just know that's even better now because when he does knock in the winner and gives it the old swish, 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 Zorro style celebration, you know it's going to be epic and it's going to be all over the socials. So.
I'd like to know how the facial injury was obtained on the basis of who the fuck got up that high. Like, he is huge. Bristol are a bit of a bogey side, apparently, unless we play them at Wembley. And as I've said on the podcast before, I feel like they're that team. I know Middlesbrough tried their hardest to take this title off their hands this season, but they're that team that either turn up and play or just don't turn up. Bristol, not great for us. I've gone for a 2-0 home win. Paul, I believe, is correct in picking Scott Twine. I've seen a few Bristol highlights over the last few weeks, and he's been practicing his free kicks and getting closer and closer and closer. So now he's had 500 practice. He'll be able to score one against us, and then Mehmeti for the second.
Don't worry, Bristol fans. I heard that little sly dig that he got in there about the fact that you might have the better of him in the league, but I think the better of you in the playoff. So don't think that went unnoticed. Our next two games are back-to-back fixtures for my lot, Middlesbrough. The first of which is Swansea City versus Middlesbrough, so it's my team I will go last. Let's go back to Andy for Swansea versus Borough.
I've got a 0-2. I've got a Zaz and everyone's favourite evening meal. I've got Ian Action.
I love it. If they were sensible and he did well, they'll have to put it on like in the concourse with the Ian's nachos and stuff like that. Stu?
I've got a Borough 1-0 win because it's about goddamn time that Whittaker got off the mark for your lot now.
I would have to double check, but I believe Old Boy Rule.
Yeah.
I think he has played for Swansea in the past. And I agree. I have also got a Whittaker goal. Sadly, I don't think it will be in a win as I'm going for a 1-1 draw. Something about Swansea, we either do really, really well or struggle. And I think this could be one of the ones where we struggle. The Potnick I've gone for the Swansea goal. Like I say, Whittaker to get his first in the red of the Borough. Second game involving the Borough of the week sees them take on Queen's Park Rangers at the Riverside. Now, obviously, again, that is my team, so I will give my prediction last. But before anyone gives any predictions, we are going to step away momentarily and take a short commercial-free break. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. And just like that, the break was for you. It was over instantaneously. The last 4 hours for us have been an absolute hellscape. Anyway, we'll carry on. Middlesbrough versus Queen's Park Rangers is our fourth destination of the week. Obviously, again, it's my team, so I'll give my prediction last. So let's go to Stu this time, the first prediction.
I have gone for a 1-1 draw. I've got Conway to score for the Borough, and the Ginger Brethren himself, Jack Colback.
Does love a goal against the Borough. I must admit that is something that I did sort of contemplate at one point. Andy?
I took the opportunity to tie this game into a podcast that you and I may have already done this week. And I've gone with a Borough 3-0 win.
Ooh, lovely.
I've got Azaz notching a pair of goals.
Oh.
And then Bergzorg to finish her up.
I do like that. Mr. Azaz does find himself in a rich vein of form, having scored in back-to-back games. I'm going to go optimistic on this one. I'm gone for a 2-1 Borough win. I, too, have gone for a goal for Mr. Azaz. And because he seems to be back in the team, back in favour at the moment, I've also gone for a goal for Marcus Fours. Was back in the squad against Stoke, got the start, and opened the scoring from the right wing. So, yes, go for Mr. Marcus Fours for me, please. And then I've gone for Morgan to be the goal scorer for QPR. We'll see how that one pans out. And our final fixture of the week takes place on Humberside, where Hull City will be taking on Oxford United. Can I presume that because this is a midweek fixture, it will just be you going?
Yeah, it'll be myself and Mr. Walker in attendance.
Obviously, it is Hull, therefore Mr. Woodmansey gives his prediction last. I'll start us off. I've gone for a 2-1 home win for goal apiece for João Pedro and Gelhard, with Goodrum to score for Oxford. Andy, what have you got down for Hull versus Oxford?
Some apologies on this one. Only some, though. I've got a 1-1 draw. I also have Pedro to score.
Mm-hmm.
And to keep the dream alive, I have got more to score for Oxford.
see what he's done there.
Couldn't refuse. I absolutely had to bring him in.
You're going to be there. You're going to be live. There's a potential he might have had crumble to get himself warmed up. Not available anymore.
No, the crumble has stopped, and it is currently Biscoff and chocolate brownie.
Oh,
I'll have
my
two,
good
please.
lord.
The guy in front of me at the game against Plymouth had one, and he was lucky to still have it by the time that he'd sat down, because I think 4 people around us went, "Oh, that looks nice." Yeah, Oxford are one of them teams where you'd have had them nailed on to be going down straight away, and we lost to them at their place 1-0. Based on what I saw at the Plymouth game, it gives me a little bit more hope, because, like you say, they just would not let it lie. So I've gone to even off the goal difference against Oxford for the season, and have gone for a 1-0 home win with Gelhardt to score.
Just when you mentioned the fact that it was like delicious football-based food, reminded me that by the time we actually got to Hartlepool on Saturday, I'd had no breakfast nor lunch, so treated myself to.
Ooh, full on pie and chip, that traditional football fodder.
Not gonna lie, that's the first time I've actually been to pools when they basically started doing meal deals.
All right, okay.
So when they offered me a sauce with my chips, I was rather taken aback. But yes, very nice too. It was. I don't even think it was a pucker pie. I think it was a locally sourced pie.
Did you go chicken balti as it's football, or
I did not. Any other guesses?
still a steak pie in it?
It was not.
Oh, back in the day when I used to get pies at football, don't so much anymore because they do like other stuff and don't eat at the stadium very often. Um, for whatever reason, Hull was the only place that it was ever listed as a potato and meat rather than meat and potato.
I just knew in the back of my head, it was like, he's definitely saying potato and meat here.
It was weird.
Yeah, that was my very first football food experience, was a meat and potato pie at Pools. And they used to be the absolute dog's bollocks. They were so good. Nice and sort of, when you...
We should just say, for podcast purposes, can't definitely say that that's what the meat in the pie was.
I was going to say, there is a distinct possibility it may have actually been a dog's set of testicles in there. But I don't know if this is the case at every other stadium, but this was my go-to. This is my only sort of like experience, was that you knew what the pies were because they were each different shapes. So just to sort of like put a nice bow on that, that was a minced beef pie. So very nice too it was. But at Pools, the meat and potato pie was a sort of a shorter, flatter, wider pie, and then your steak pie and your meat and your minced beef pie were like the sort of the ones that look a bit more like a pork pie style.
When we went to Preston away for Boxing Day, all of the pies there had baked into the top of them rice paper labels.
Nice. PNE?
Yeah.
Lovely little touch. I think anywhere where in the vicinity, like pies are sort of, let's call it what it is, currency. You're going to get that. So like anywhere in Lancashire, pies are always going to be quite sort of like prevalent on the thing. I think it's always like of the sort of the pie league as it is. Morecambe always seems to do quite well because they have like a famous sort of pie and stuff like that. But yeah, obviously at this point, I feel it's imperative that we mention the time that myself and Mr. Cook went to a game at York, and one of us bought a pie, one of us bought a bottle of Coke, and I'll let you guess which was the warmer of the two. Yes, hint, I don't think I was getting food at York again after that particular game. But this was before York moved to their shiny, spanking new stadium with toilets that actually weren't just a wall for you to have a piss against. So, the charm of an old school stadium. So, there we go. Predictions are in. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to raise? I am just at this point checking to see if there's been any news on the borough. So I'm almost certain that something did come up, but I did not make a note of it. Naughty me. Shame. Shame on me.
No, mine was just the injury stuff from earlier. Nothing really shaking at the moment at Hull.
No, I was wrong. There was absolutely nothing on the agenda that's happened. One thing that I did see. Are you boys familiar with what the COSM is? So you may have seen it. There's a location, I think, in Dallas and in Los Angeles.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
And it's the bar that is basically a screen, but it's almost like you sat in the stadium. And apparently, I don't know if it was because it was the FA Cup, they didn't have the rights. The COSM showed the Middlesbrough versus Derby game at their locations in the States this past weekend. And I saw a couple of clips of it. Actually looked quite good. One of the angles was from directly behind sort of like not directly behind the goal, but almost. It was almost as if it was like a ball boy's perspective from sort of just to the right of one of the goals, and the other one was obviously taken from as if you were the sort of like watching on like a sky sort of angle from the side of the pitch, and it looked pretty good. I think if I was able to sort of, if I wasn't able to go to the game, but I was able to get to the bar to watch that type of coverage, I would very much be interested, as it looks like quite the way to get involved in a sport, I would say. So if they can get that technology over here and get it launched, I dare say it would be very
Just
very popular.
cross-pollinating here. But I had seen that they'd used those venues to show the wrestling with the Elimination Chamber, and they'd specifically put a hard cam inside the chamber so that their experience of watching it on this big fucking screen was chamber, which was pretty cool.
In the pod. So for those who don't know, the way the match is set up, you have like basically a square box, almost like a cage, made of chain link, and then in each corner. Camera angle was from one of the corners, so it was almost as if you were almost like a VR experience. I would imagine. Mr. Cook froze there. He did get it. So there you have it. And the week done and dusted. Thank you as always to these two gentlemen for joining me to go through the details of their team. Thank you, the listeners, the watchers. Obviously, if this is your first time that you've stumbled across the podcast, you're very welcome, and thank you for tuning in. If it is your first time, maybe think about a little subscribe to the channel if you've liked what you've heard. If you're on YouTube, a little subscribe. Share the podcast around. Give us a comment. Say what you liked, say what you didn't like. If you don't like my incessant rambling, let me know, and I'll just cut off my tongue or something like that. But yes, it's not just the football podcast that we give to you here at the Cooking Gas Podcast Network. Myself and Mr. Cook mentioned it obviously earlier. in the piece, the other podcast that we may have recorded earlier this week, that is the Darkest Timeline podcast. That's Mr. Cook's little sort of where we just covered our So go back and see what happened the main event, because I definitely said there would be absolutely no chance of a certain thing happened, and as seems to be the way with my predictions on the particular wrestling podcasts, it definitely happened, and I now look like a bit of a tit. That was nice. And now that we're on the cusp of the Formula One season starting, the Straight to the Apex podcast will be coming your way very, very shortly, and on a weekly basis, dare I say. Potentially not on the weeks where there's not a race, as I imagine they won't have that much to talk about on those weeks. So, there you have it. Thank you very much. Join us again next week, where we'll break it all down, and we'll start again for you. Till then, look after yourselves, keep an eye out for each other, and we will see you next week. That's about it.
There we go. What do you think of that? Another one done, another one gone. More games gone, more games to come. Exactly what we want. Big thank you for watching, big thank you for listening, big thank you for being here. Before you leave us, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave a review where you can leave a review, and check out the website, thecookiecast.com. There we have social media links and an email button. That way you can get in touch with us. That's it for this one. Till next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to these grumpy old men talk about football. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share and subscribe.